Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I am your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, also the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord. Do come down and have a drink with us sometime. And on the show, I am the regular old sake otaku.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
Tim, I love how you're able to to nail that intro every single time.
Almost like I've never said it before. It just rolls off the tongue now.
Just rolls off the tongue. So I'm noticing something in the Zoom here. It's not just you and me.
Yes.
So can you please let me and the people at home know who is this person?
Yeah, we have a special guest joining us for the show today. It is a good friend of ours. I want to introduce everybody to Greg Beck. He is a sake educator and expert from the West Coast. He's got an exciting project going on over there that we're going to talk about today. So Greg, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, guys. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast I've listened to so many times.
Well, thank you for that, Greg. And welcome to the show. Yeah. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. It's not weird to see you. I've seen you both online or in person, but never together.
Yeah. So Greg, for those listeners of ours who have not heard of you before, do you want to give us a little bit of a self-introduction and how you got connected to Japan in the first place?
Yeah, let's see how quickly I can run through this. I am originally from Tucson, Arizona. I went to the University of Arizona, and my second language was actually German from high school. And getting into college and testing into a very high level of German, I did not like the grad student teaching it. So I said, I'm going to drop this and come back to it later. And the next year, I was looking through the course teachers to make sure she wasn't there. And I found Japanese. And I was like, oh, I can learn Japanese? That's rad. So I signed up, and I knew from learning German that studying abroad would hasten my understanding of Japanese. And I very quickly decided that was necessary getting into the language. So it was completely language driven. I'm a linguist. I'm a word nerd. I love puns. And I moved to Japan for my junior year of college and lived with a Japanese host family and just tried to immerse myself as much as I could, which included both the language and the culture, and just wanted to learn as much about everything as I could. Ended up becoming very fluent very quickly and moving back to Japan after college for the JET program. So the JET program is the Japan Exchange and Teaching program for young professionals, and they matched me up with Hiroshima prefectural government. And I worked as both an assistant language teacher for 2 years and a coordinator of international relations for another 3 years. The long and short of it is I got to find out a lot about my prefecture where I was living, including the fact that Hiroshima is one of the 3 oldest sake brewing regions in Japan and has a huge, rich history of sake making. So I went on brewery tours and I helped translate materials for their annual sake festival. And that's kind of where I got indoctrinated with sake and became not just a regular drinker of it, but somebody who wanted to learn as much as possible about it.
Well, that's really cool. And I'm not going to hold it against you that you said you became fluent in Japanese very quickly, because I've been studying for about 10 years and still can barely put 2 words together, but I won't hold that against you. I promise.
I have to give all credit to my host family, the Ogawas. They were instrumental in everything. And Konan Daigaku, shout out to Konan University in Hyogo Prefecture. All of my professors and my host family were hugely to thank for that.
So you did mention that you went to visit a lot of breweries when you were over in Hiroshima. But what was the moment? What was that like aha moment for you when you tried some sake and went, oh yes?
So honestly, it wasn't one single moment, as anticlimactic as that might be. Going to the Hiroshima Sake Festival every year was this amazing experience because it started off like, hey guys, here's an all you can drink sake event for $25 roughly. Let's go get housed, right? Like we're drinking as much as we could for the joy of having a boozy day in our early 20s, as we all probably do. And after, the second year doing that and having literally every prefecture that makes sake represented in this park, where all you had to do is run up and say, give me something dry or give me something sweet. I finally started to think, hey, what's going on here? Why are these so vastly different? If I go to one prefecture's sake, I can, after, tasting many back to back to back, being a silly young guy, I started to notice like, oh, this one's really earthy and this one's got minerality and this one's dry and this one's sweet, even though they're made by the same brewery. What is going on here? And I just started taking advantage of the fact that I speak Japanese and I have these Japanese brewers representing their breweries all pouring for me. And I just asked questions like, why is this way? And they'd say something like, oh, it's our water, or, oh, it's our rice. And everyone had different answers, but I took it all in and just kept asking more and more questions. And from there, I just took that outside of that festival. And if I was at a bar that had a large sake menu, or somebody mentioned that they were known for sake, I just kept asking questions.
Mm. And after you finished up your time in Japan with this like love for sake, you came back here. How did you get into sake professionally?
Yeah, it's funny. I moved to New York to be a television news producer for Japanese network TBS. And I was working in an all Japanese office, and we would often go out to dinner after a long day's work at a Japanese restaurant. And I actually, by that point, was really into shochu as well. So more often than not, I was drinking shochu. But my love for sake didn't go away. It was always there, and I was always drinking it where I could find the ones I liked, or where I found something that piqued my interest or caught my eye. And it was actually until I moved to Los Angeles that I decided to dive back into it. So moving to LA, I had a lot of free time and didn't know a lot of people. So I started volunteering at sake events. And that is where I met Toshio Ueno, or as we all know him, Ueno-san. And I worked at a sake booth at a LA Times event. And at the end of the night, he goes, hey, you know a lot about sake. And I was like, wow, no, you know way more than me. I don't know anything compared to you. And he's like, no, you're like practically a sommelier. And I said, I don't know what that means. He said, oh, it's like an expert. I was like, you're the expert. He's like, I know, I'm a master sommelier. I said, oh, that makes sense. And he goes, no, you don't get it. Like, master sommeliers are able to teach sommeliers, and you're almost there. I can help you fill in the gaps. I offer courses, and you just need to read some books and work with me a little bit, and you can take the test and get qualified. And that's where I realized that being an expert in sake was actually a path that was available to me.
And now Sake Secret, a little sake bar and bottle shop inside of a beer brewery.
Yeah. Oh man.
Tell us about that.
This is kind of a really happy accident that came from my passion for all things craft and getting back into the food and beverage world in LA. I was working at izakayas and sake houses. I actually started just before I moved to LA from New York, working at N Brasserie in Greenwich Village and getting to know their sake sommelier. And that was kind of what planted the seed in my head coming to LA, like, oh yeah, remember sake, your old friend. So I did all this part-time work just having fun, paying the bills at these izakayas. And I did different jobs in import export. And while I was working out here in LA, I was also homebrewing beer for years. And I decided to finally pull the trigger and become an entrepreneur. And I thought to myself, let me open a brewery, because LA doesn't have very many craft breweries. But first, let me get some hands-on experience at a commercial brewery, because I'm sure it's different than home brewing, and I'd rather make the mistakes and get the learning on their dime than mine. So I started working at a craft beer brewery in Torrance called Strand. And by the time I really felt competent, the number of breweries in LA County had quadrupled. And I started writing a business plan and realized that there was no more need for more breweries in LA. And I had this idea in my head, like, I need to do something that I'm passionate about, that I'm knowledgeable about, but it also needs to fill a need. A niche, not just a niche like to make money off of, but like a need in the community for something. And I hit on sake as one of these things that I know a lot about. People always want me to talk about, and people want to drink and want to learn more, but there's just not that many people doing what you guys are doing here on this podcast. So I changed my business plan from a brewery to a sake shop, because in Japan, no matter how small the city, village, or township is, there's always a sake shop. And you go to the big cities and they'll have a Western wine shop. So I thought, isn't it weird that the opposite isn't the case in America? Like, every little town in America has a wine shop. Shouldn't a big city like LA have a sake shop?
It should.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
As it turns out.
You're absolutely right. So I wrote this business plan, and I was still brewing away my days at Strand. And then some other friends at another brewery where I live in Long Beach said, hey, we're expanding. We need help. Come help us. And I said, that's very kind of you, but I'm trying to open a sake shop, so I'm not going to quit my brewery to work at another brewery. That's kind of a tangent that I don't want to go on. And they said, well, we have lots of space. Why don't you do both? And so basically I'm helping them brew, and they're helping me get started, because there's not a farmer's market option available for somebody trying to start an alcohol business, which would make farmers markets way better, in my opinion. But it's the logistics and the legal aspects of selling alcohol before you have a shop are very difficult. So thanks to Long Beach Beer Lab here in Long Beach, I get to brew during the day, which I still love doing. And then I clock out and I open my little sake shop. And because they're a brew pub, they have a full restaurant. I'm able to also act as a sake bar for the brewery and pair sake with their sourdough pizzas and other tasty menu items.
Yeah, no, I had the good fortune to visit you, Greg, out there, and spent the evening with you as you're pouring sake. So maybe I can give people some of the vibe, a little description of what it's like. So we have in one of the corners of this very large beer brewing space, Greg is set up with a bar and tables, and behind him is a refrigerated glass case filled to the brim with the most delicious looking sake bottles and a big flag overhead that says Sake Secret. And if you come over to this corner of the beautiful beer brewing space, like a tap room kind of space, there's one corner that's reserved for sake, and your friendly face is there to greet everybody. And you can sell people bottles retail, and you can also pour them samples. So it's like the best of both worlds.
That is extraordinarily not possible here in New York.
Yes. Yeah. So before we go any further, Sake Secret, what's behind the name? Why did you call this shop that you'd set up there? Why is it Sake Secret?
Oh gosh, I wish I had short answers for any of your questions. As a journalist and a writer, I have always been writing stuff. Even while I was moonlighting at izakayas here in LA, I was doing travel writing and going back and forth to Japan. And just on a lark, I decided to give myself homework and a creative writing exercise. I decided to write The Secrets of Sake. And it was a story of how sake is made from the perspective of the rice. And it is still living out there on the internet on a blog. I think it might be Long Time No Taco. I forget. I had a lot of honey blog sites in my day. But it was basically a multi-part story that's a horror story of this grain of rice and his entire village being swept up and tortured and manipulated until they basically became sake. And then that kind of secret, sake secret, like stuck in my head. And so I went with that for my business name.
And I don't know if you agree with this, but I think a lot of consumers who are really into sake but feel like there's this veil, it's behind a veil, and they don't know what the secret is about sake. So it does make sense given the position sake has for a lot of consumers right now.
Yeah, I always tell people I have to sell you the sake, but the secrets are free.
I like it.
All right. Now, we know you have a new project coming up that's very exciting. But before we get to that, how about we explore a little sake secret of our own and sip on some?
Always down.
That was very subtle, Tim.
Very subtle. All right. So we prepared a sake to enjoy together today. JP, do you want to let us know what we're drinking?
I would be happy to. So I'm quite excited about this one, and I imagine, Tim, so are you. This is the Hakkaisan Yukimuro, the 3-year snow-aged Junmai Daiginjo. So this is classified as a Junmai Daiginjo, but also a Koshu because of that 3-year aging. The brewery, of course, is Hakkaisan Sake Brewery over in Niigata Prefecture. The rice is actually a combination of Gohyakuman Goku, Yamanashiki, and Yukinose, all milled down to 50% of their original size. Alcohol percentage is 17%. The SMV is -1. And personally, this is probably my favorite Hakkaisan product. So I'm excited to be tasting this again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, we had this on the show for our gift giving episode way back when. So,
yeah.
And full disclosure, I am a brand rep for this particular brand, but we all happen to have it. So we decided just to go for it. And we're going to go ahead and get it in the glass and do our ASMR. All right. So we've got it in the glass. Now, John and I have talked about this sake on the show before.
At length.
So, Greg, we'd love to get your impression of the aroma and the taste. So let's give it a smell.
Yeah, let me sing its praises. I have sold this for many years, not just at my sake shop, but at other izakayas as well. And I love the smell. I get white flower. It's a classic Junmai Daiginjo aroma. In the best sense of the more modern ones, you get more melon and tropical fruit, whereas this is more of a gentle floral aroma. Mm-hmm. And I get a little lychee, even like a hint. Mm-hmm. And you definitely get like a biscuity sort of smell from the rice.
I like that. I never thought about associating that rice with a little bit of sweetness to it and saying like biscuit. That really works, actually.
Yeah. And for those who are not familiar with the Hakkaisan snow-aged sake, this is called the Yukimuro because this sake is actually aged for 3 years in the Yukimuro. And Yukimuro is a snow cellar. It's a room filled with snow, and there's stainless steel tanks side by side with the snow. And they use really low temperature, very, very close to freezing temperatures to mature this sake for 3 years. And that adds a real complexity to the sake. So let's go ahead and give it a taste. What I really like about this sake being from Niigata is that when you think about a koshu or an aged sake, normally they're dark in color and more caramely and a little bit more oxidized. This is aged and concentrated, but I always describe it as a Niigata-style koshu. Like it's still clear, relatively clean on the finish, but it is concentrated. So that's a lovely marriage of Niigata and koshu, I think.
Yeah, this is super clean. And like you said, the clarity is almost crystalline. And there is a little bit of that rice coloration, but nowhere near what most koshu have. It's like you have this unaged, it's been aged for 3 years, but it has eluded time through being kept cold. And then as it warms up in your cup, all of that age catches up to it. So when it's fresh out of the refrigerator and you just open that and you pour it in your glass, it tastes the way it did 3 years ago. And then as the temperature comes up, you're getting all of that aging catching up to it in your glass. And you get these tight white pepper flavors that kind of melt and turn into caramel.
Well, I think it's important to talk about umami when I drink this sake because the finish has much more umami than you're going to find in these classic Niigata styles, aged or not. So this really brings out a very elegant umami. I think that word might scare some people when they're talking about sake. I don't want any funky, earthy flavors, but this brings a gentle, savory note on the finish that pairs so well with red meat, short ribs, different pork dishes. And for me, it just opens up a whole new world of pairing. That aging concentrates the umami and gives you the savoriness that is really, really special. That's one thing I love about this one.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about it is that it's so friendly to Western dishes. And as somebody who, for a lot of years, like getting into sake, most of what I was eating was Western stuff. And so it was like, oh, this sake goes fantastic with Italian food that I have at home, nice, hearty Western style dishes. And it really stands up to them perfectly.
Yeah.
That's so funny that you started with sake and Western dishes, because I feel like most people, it's the opposite. They only have sake when they're at a Japanese restaurant. And in their head, the two are inextricably linked. And I can't tell you how many people have walked into Sake Secret and seen my sake collection and gone, where's the sushi?
Oh, yeah.
Well, for me, it was more along the lines of bringing sake home and sipping it without food, but I have to eventually eat. And so I'll just, I'm going to eat, and then I will also have some sake. And, oh, wow, this goes really well with what I'm eating. This is wonderful.
Yeah, for me, that's where all the fun is finding which sakes pair with which dishes in non-Japanese cuisine. As I could eat Japanese food only for the rest of my life and be happy. But the thing I love about America in general, if I can get poetic, is like the multiculturalism and what happens when you mash up these different cultures and you find a sake that goes really well with a cheeseburger, or you have, foie gras and sake, and you go, what? How is this working? It's unlocking the best in each other. Like the food is making the sake taste better. The sake is making the food taste better. And it's that elevating it and taking it to the next level.
Excellent. Greg, thank you for tasting with us here. The big question now is what's next for Sake Secret and for Greg Beck?
Thank you. Yeah. What's next is what has always been in the plan, which was to open a brick and mortar sake shop. And the pop-up has been a great prelude to that. And the brewery's food, a lot of sourdough crust pizzas, and, we've got cheese that pairs with sake incredibly well, and all kinds of fun things going on there. But I really want to be my own boss, have my own spot, expand the selection, expand the space, and include Japanese craft beer and shochu, Japanese snacks, and other things that I feel would compete with the brewery. I've been holding back and not trying to provide too much with the small space I have there. I want to open a brick and mortar shop. What I have now is technically the first in LA County, and this shop will be a home base for sake lovers in LA County and the surrounding region as well. So that there's no question, like, where can we have this brewer come and talk about their sake, or where can we have these sake meetups? Like, I want there to be a dedicated space where people always feel welcome to come and meet and nerd out on sake. So I'm about to launch a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is to help me crowdfund, and there's a number of reasons for that, but the simplest is just that there are a lot of upfront costs associated with opening any alcohol shop. I need a lot of licenses and permits, as well as down payment on the space. And then there's a half a year plus waiting period where I send all that money out, and I have to sit here and wait for the city and the state to approve the licenses and permits before I can actually open up. Now, the good news is I can still run my pop-up during that time and keep making headway there. But having this money will also help me with the build out. It'll help me with my first round inventory of the expanded selection. Like Tim mentioned, I have one fridge that I have packed to the bursting with over 75 kinds of premium sake, but I want to have 3 of those fridges, and I want to have prepackaged cheese and charcuterie and more to provide to people and give them not just pairing suggestions, but things that they can take home and eat right away. And I want to have a traditional Japanese space for events as well. So the Kickstarter is to help pay for that. And if it goes really well, the reach goal is to have that private event space as well, where I can introduce local chefs and we can have fun pairing their food with sake.
That's great.
That sounds very exciting.
It's a lot of business stuff, and I really hate it. I just want to
get to the fun part where you get to sell the sake.
Now, if people want to get behind you and want to support this new sake secret, can we call it a lair? I guess we can call it a lair.
The secret lair.
The secret lair of sake in LA County.
My Himitsukichi.
How do people get in touch with you, or where can they go to learn more about supporting your Kickstarter?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for this opportunity. They can find me on Sake Secret on Instagram, is one of my fastest ways to communicate with people. And I also have a monthly newsletter on my website, sakesecret.com. You can subscribe by just going to sakesecret.com/subscribe. I have a TikTok and a Twitter and a Facebook page as well. But the Instagram and the newsletter are your best bets.
Okay, so if we visit sakesecret.com, we'll see the Kickstarter info.
Smash the like button and subscribe.
Well, Greg, I cannot wait to support you on Kickstarter, and can't wait for this shop to open, and I can't wait to learn what the sake secret is. But for anyone who wants to learn their own sake secret, please visit Kickstarter and support our friend Greg. I want to thank John. So great to taste with you, as always. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. We hope you enjoy our show.
Thank you, listeners.
Yes. And I want to give a special shout out and hello and a thank you to our patrons. If you'd like to support the revolution here on Sake Revolution, please visit patreon.com/Sake Revolution to learn more about supporting us.
And did you know that at sakerevolution.com, there is a small collection of t-shirts and other kinds of swag bearing the Sake Revolution logo? So, on that note, revolutionaries, please grab your glass. Remember to keep drinking sake and kanpai!